A cowboy wanted to form an expedition team, but unexpectedly, he was first lectured by an old man. The next day, when he tried to find a bodyguard, he got beaten up. On the third day, due to his injuries, he finally had the chance to have a good chat with the nurse. Just when they were chatting enthusiastically, the old man burst in again. What's even more annoying is that when the cowboy went to find the old man at night, the old man claimed that he was not responsible for the matter. Ugh, it seems I took the wrong manuscript. Well, let's just start the next chapter directly.
Chapter 2: Forming an Expedition Team. Jack stood at the door of the police station, looking at the small town under the setting sun. The mayor's John Hamilton's threat still echoed in his ears. If you insist on going after the so-called truth, you will not only face the dangers of nature but also the pressure from the federal government. Jack clutched the map in his hand, filled with determination. He knew that to uncover the truth behind his father's disappearance, he must embark on this unknown path.
Jack!
A familiar voice called out. He turned to see Old Bill standing not far away, his gaze deep.
Old Bill?
Jack called out.
I need your help.
I should have guessed. The son of a police officer will never give up.
Old Bill sighed. Old Bill brought Jack to the town's shooting range. The wooden targets on the range were riddled with bullet holes, witnesses to the growth of many shooters.
Shooting is not just pulling the trigger. You need to learn to judge the distance, wind direction, and the movement of the target.
Old Bill said while demonstrating. Jack watched Old Bill's movements carefully, noting his steady posture and the almost motionless barrel of the gun.
Remember, the most important thing is to stay calm. Panic will only get you killed.
Old Bill handed him a revolver. However, Jack's first attempt was not successful. Although his shooting was accurate, his movements were not smooth. Old Bill immediately pointed out his problem.
Your posture is too stiff. In the wilderness, enemies won't give you time to adjust.
Jack clenched his teeth and started practicing again. Sweat ran down his forehead, soaking his shirt. Despite being exhausted, he did not give up.
Try again.
Old Bill's voice was stern and merciless. Jack nodded, aiming at the center of the target. This time, his movements were more fluid, and the bullet hit the center of the target.
Better!
Old Bill finally showed a sign of approval.
But not enough.
The next morning, Old Bill brought Jack to the stable. He chose a horse with a more docile temperament, ready to teach Jack how to ride a horse in complex terrain.
Horses are your most reliable partner in the wilderness, but you must respect them and not force them to do things they don't want to do.
Old Bill said while adjusting the saddle. On the prairie, Old Bill had Jack try to maintain balance on the undulating terrain and taught him how to control the direction of the horse in emergencies.
Remember, horses are more sensitive than you. If you feel uneasy, they will too.
Old Bill reminded him. However, Jack encountered difficulties in his first attempt. The horse suddenly reared up on a small hill, nearly throwing him off.
You're too tense. Relax. Become one with the horse.
Old Bill shouted. Jack adjusted his breathing and tried to connect with the horse. This time, he successfully completed the turn.
Good, but still not skilled enough.
Old Bill's voice was still stern. By evening, Old Bill brought Jack into the nearby forest. This was a place he often visited in his youth, filled with memories of the western wilderness.
The wilderness won't become gentler because you're afraid. You need to learn to distinguish which plants are edible and which are poisonous.
Old Bill said while observing the surrounding environment. He pointed to a plant and said,
This is poison ivy. Touching it will cause blisters all over your body. And this mushroom
he pointed to another plant,
is edible.
He also taught Jack how to build simple shelters, how to find water sources, and how to determine direction at night.
Remember, The key to surviving in the wilderness is calm and judgment.
Old Bill instructed at the end. Despite the excruciatingly rigorous training, Jack never once wavered. His palms, rubbed raw by the gun stock, were dotted with blisters, and his knees, battered by countless falls, were a patchwork of bruises. Yet, he constantly clenched his teeth and pressed on unyieldingly.
Why are you so strict?
Jack asked during a rest.
Because the western wilderness won't be kind to you. If you want to survive, you must be stronger than anyone else.
Old Bill's voice was still cold. Jack tried to argue, but finally chose silence. He understood Old Bill's intentions. Only by going through hellish training could one survive in the face of real danger. 3 days later, Jack had basically mastered the skills Old Bill taught him. Although he was still unskilled, at least he was no longer completely at a loss.
You learn quickly, but the real wilderness is far more dangerous than you imagine.
Old Bill patted Jack's shoulder.
I will remember every word you say.
Jack said firmly.
Remember one thing.
Old Bill's voice suddenly became serious.
The western wilderness is not a world for one person. You need to trust your companions and stay vigilant at all times.
After leaving Old Bill, Jack stood at the crossroads outside the town, looking ahead at the endless desert. His heart was filled with unease, but also with a sense of confidence. He knew that his father's disappearance must hide a bigger secret, and he, Jack Rivers, must uncover it. Jack's first stop was the town's saloon. This place gathered all kinds of adventurers and vagrants. He needed a reliable person to join his team, a person who could survive in the wilderness and protect his companions. Jack pushed open the door of the bar, and a strong smell of smoke and alcohol hit him. Under the dim lights, the crowd was crowded around the bar and tables, with loud laughter and shouting echoing. His eyes were soon captivated by a brawl unfolding at the heart of the bar. 2 men were locked in a ferocious struggle, encircled by a ring of onlookers, as a deafening chorus of cheers and shouts filled the air. Jack identified one of them as a renowned, burly man in the town, boasting bulging muscles and prodigious strength. The other was a black man, with a trim and athletic build, his movements fluid and lightning fast. "Is that Danny Klein?" Jack murmured to himself, moving closer. The fight had been going on for 10 minutes, and both men showed high-level fighting skills. The muscle man used his strength to constantly pressure Danny, but Danny defused the attacks with his agility. His movements were clean and decisive, as if every strike was carefully calculated. The muscle man threw a heavy punch, but Danny easily sidestepped and, as he did, grabbed the man's wrist and executed a beautiful suplex, throwing him to the ground. However, the muscle man quickly rolled over and grabbed Danny's leg in an attempt to counterattack. They struggled on the ground, the situation becoming deadlock. Jack was captivated. He had never seen such high-level fighting, every move precise and powerful. Although Danny was smaller than the muscle man, his speed and skill were clearly superior. As the muscle man began to show signs of fatigue, Danny seized a fleeting opportunity. He quickly adjusted his balance, dodged the muscle man's last strike, and then delivered a swift hook punch to the man's chin. The muscle man fell to the ground and never got up again. The audience erupted in cheers.
"Danny, you're so great! Still so strong! Danny, there are still a few more matches tonight. Want to come?"
However, Danny seemed to ignore these cheers. He slowly stood up, brushed off the dust, and walked to his table. There were several bags of money on the table, clearly the bets he had won.
"Danny,
Someone shouted.
want to have another round?"
Danny did not stop, just said casually.
I should go home.
He picked up the money bags and walked out of the bar. His figure was particularly lonely, as if this noisy town had nothing to do with him. Jack stood still, watching Danny's retreating figure. He noticed that although Danny had won the match, there was no joy on his face. His eyes were deep and cold, as if hiding some unspeakable sorrow.
He's a murderer.
A drunk voice said in Jack's ear.
He killed someone in the south 2 years ago.
Jack turned to look at the speaker, a drunk with beer foam on his face.
But I've never seen anyone stronger than him.
The drunk continued.
He always comes alone and leaves alone. No one knows where he comes from, and no one knows where he's going.
Jack was silent for a moment. He had never seen a person like Danny, powerful and lonely, calm and reserved. I need a partner, Jack muttered to himself, a person who can survive in the wilderness. His gaze followed Danny in the direction he went, and he made a silent decision. No matter what secrets you are hiding, I need you.